Dragonbane is like D&D if the D stood for Duck People and decidedly more Swedish. Welcome to a D&D Refugees guide for Dragonbane.
Come on in, boys. The water is fine.
Last year, Free League Publishing released Dragonbane, the English translated version of the seminal Swedish RPG Drakar och Demoner. The game is a tighter fantasy game where every piece of equipment has its purpose, and games can be both mirthful and deadly at the same time. Now, recently, producer Pete got sent a review copy of the starter box for the game, so let's dig in and see what's inside.
What's in the box?
So, what exactly is in the starter box? Well, it contains the basic rules for the game, an adventure book that contains 11 different adventures that can be combined into a single epic campaign, a booklet for playing Dragonbane solo, a map of the Misty Vale adventure setting, playing cards, we'll dig into that later, dice, pre-gen characters, cardboard standees, and a double-sided battle map. All in all, it's got a lot more content than the average D&D starter set, although at a higher cost, with the Dragonbane starter set costing about $45, while the most recent D&D starter set costs about $20. In terms of the game itself, while on its surface, Dragonbane might seem similar to D&D due to the use of a D20 and other, standard dice, it's actually a lot different and draws more heavily from Chaosium's basic role-playing system and other RPGs rather than D&D itself. While characters will still have 6 core attributes with a score from 3 to 18, they have a profession instead of a class. The core rules for Dragonbane has 10 professions, and players choose from one of 6 playable kin, which includes a mix of familiar kin like humans, halfling, elves, and dwarves, and new, the mallard, which is a duck person, and the wolfkin, which is, well, what it sounds like. Your choice of kin and profession decides what abilities you have and what skills you start with, but they don't impact ability scores. Now, one of the key differences between Dragonbane and D&D is making checks. Players roll a d20 when they need to make a check and compare it to their skill level. If they've rolled equal to or under their skill level, they pass the check. Rolling a 1 is called rolling a dragon and is the equivalent to a critical success, while rolling a 20 is called rolling a demon and is a critical failure. If you don't roll a demon, you can also choose to push your roll and re-roll it, although you suffer a negative condition as a result of the push, regardless of the outcome. There's also a version of advantage and disadvantage called boons and banes, although players can stack either multiple boons or multiple banes on a roll, and a single boon cancels out a single bane, so this isn't like if you have double advantage and disadvantage on a roll for some reason, all that cancels out. If you have 2 boons and a single bane, you just have a net positive boon and you roll 2 d20s. In combat, players move and take 1 action. However, there are several nuances to combat, such as all the players having the ability to dodge or evade if they are hit by an attack in combat. Now, both of those are reactions that use up a player's turn in combat, but they provide players with the opportunity to potentially negate all the damage that they would take from a monster. Another key to Dragonbane combat is the sneak attack, which all players have access to. Basically, a sneak attack allows players to choose when they go, they get a boon on the attack roll, and their target can't dodge or parry the attack. Critical hits also work a bit differently in Dragonbane, as players can choose between several options when they get a critical hit, and those range from rolling extra damage dice to performing a second free attack to negating armor. Now, additionally, initiative is very different than what we see in D&D or Pathfinder, as players draw cards to determine initiative. See, that's where those cards come in handy. On each round, players draw from the initiative deck and then go in order. The lowest initiative goes first. Things like sneak attacks allow players to choose their initiative cards at the top of the round, while waiting allows a player to swap their initiative card with another creature. So, while you can't just build a character that always goes first in every encounter, you also won't be stuck going at the end of every round, every turn, unless you have some very bad luck at it. Finally, the game has some very defined rules for things like downtime and encumbrance, all of which are meant to be more intuitive and are just generally more common sense than what you'd see in other games. For instance, encumbrance is defined by a character's strength score, and players can carry a number of items equal to half their strength. Pretty simple. There's also a robust crafting system and a cooking system. and other downtime activities meant to make journeying and exploration a little bit more exciting than just a montage and handwave. Now, let's talk about the worlds of D&D and Dragonbane. While D&D technically has several campaign settings, even if the more recent sourcebooks for them are shallower than the first Suicide Squad movie,
What was that?
Dragonbane focuses its setting into an area known as the Misty Vale, which sounds both mysterious and like the name of some lesser-known Batman love interest. Now, the Misty Vale acts as kind of like the adventurer's playground. Your character may come from outside the Misty Vale, but you will almost certainly spend most of your time traversing, camping, exploring, and fighting inside the Misty Vale in your quest to uncover riches and win glory. So while D&D often features sweeping campaigns that take you up and down the entire Sword Coast or across the frozen north of Icewind Dale, Dragonbane has a much tighter focus on the Misty Vale itself, which, quite frankly, seems very similar to Dragonbane as a whole. It's a much tighter focused system.
Tight like a tiger!
Now, the lore surrounding the Misty Vale allows you to really set any kind of adventure there, as by its very nature, it's full of unknown creatures and ruins. But the GM will need to do a lot of the heavy lifting versus the more fleshed out, larger scope of even homebrewed D&D 5e campaigns that take place in one of their official settings. Unless that setting is Dragonlance or Planescape or Spelljammer. You get the point. Now, all in all, Dragonbane takes a very different, more focused approach to the standard fantasy tabletop RPG experience. It assumes players will want to explore ruins and fight monsters, and creates a common sense intuitive framework for just that. It's not exactly trying to reinvent the wheel made by D&D or Pathfinder, but it does try to streamline it into a game system that puts the focus on the act of adventuring rather than trying to have something for every scenario and every possible thing that you could come up with in the table. It's very good at what it does, and it encourages you to stay within that, which, quite frankly, is how a lot of tabletop RPGs work. So, have you played Dragonbane? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons.